everyone. My name is Nicole Garceau. Thank you for joining me. On this segment of Co-Creating today, we'll be discussing Mercury Retrograde. Now, next week, September 6, 2021, is when Mercury will be entering retrograde season. Now, what is that in astrology? Well, we have a stage, what's called the pre-shadow. And what that is that as Mercury makes its way through Libra and hits 10 degrees, over that period of time, it will gradually slow down and come to a standstill. And when it comes to that standstill, that's what we call station retrograde. This is when Mercury will retrograde those steps. Now, when is it going to actually go retrograde? That date is September 27th, 25 degrees Libra. So as it retraces steps, it'll go back to that 10 degrees of Libra, October 18th. And then the next stage is what we call station direct. So that Mercury retraces those steps again in forward motion, gradually increasing speed over those few days, and then hitting that 25 degrees Libra again. And that will happen November 2nd. And then after that, Mercury leaves shadow season. Mercury retrograde is over. We can all do our happy dance. So why is it that we hear about Mercury retrograde so much? Well, Mercury is all around us. We're in an information age, information overload age. And Mercury goes retrograde 2 to 3 times per year, which is pretty much about 18% of its time. And when we live in a society, when we're busy 24/7, we have, well, not necessarily that we're busy 24/7, but we have the ability, if we wanted to be busy 24/7. And with the touch of a button, we have access to the internet, TV, short distance travel, everywhere. Mercury ruled themes are all around us. So this is why we take notice when Mercury goes retrograde. But before I go further on the subject of Mercury retrograde, I want to point out the magic behind Mercury. And to do this, let's talk about mythology for one quick second. Now, Mercury can do something in mythology that no other god can do. Now, what is that? It can go to the underworld, be on Earth here with us mortals, as well as going into the heavens. And that's the reason why Mercury is the messenger. And if we say, and the well-known saying, knowledge is power, information is power, well, suffice to say, Mercury is a powerful force to reckon with. So when Mercury goes retrograde, what do we need to look at? Well, first of all, we look to the sign it's in. In this case here, it's going to be in Libra. And we look into, if the season involves 2 separate signs. And if you're like me, that uses the unequal house system, which is Placidus, is the system that I use. Does this Mercury retrograde involve a combination of 2 houses? Is it going to be traveling through 2 houses? Or is it going to stay in that one house? And this is going to be different for everybody when you look into your natal charts. There's an opportunity for these things to go still, delayed, or even have problems with, like miscommunication. So when this disruption happens, there's a purpose behind it. And what is that purpose? Initially, we don't see it. It's just like when Mercury in mythology goes into the different worlds, so does it within us. It has the opportunity to blend the conscious and the unconscious. And, as Mercury makes its steps and retraces its steps and goes back up, forth upon them again, we have a different perspective. We have clarity. We are given an opportunity to reevaluate, re-examine all these things. And this is symbolic of what Mercury can do in mythology. Blending that unconscious and conscious, going from one world to the other world, relaying all that information. Now, I know when we experience delays, complications, and all the during Mercury retrograde season, we can get frustrated. We can get angry. We can get upset, at all these issues that arise during the Mercury retrograde season. But the point to this disruption, however, is to slow down and do everything and this is what's asked of us during the Mercury retrograde period. All these reevaluate, review, re-examine, re-edit, all these things. And it involves everything that Mercury rules. A car, for example, it can't always go forward. It needs to stop, and you need to put some gas in. It needs that pause. Same with our electronic devices, Mercury ruled object. Battery gets depleted over time. Plug in, recharge. Now, we're no different. Mercury asks us to slow down, take a breath. Mercury rules the lungs. And it asks us ultimately to stop, revamp, reconnect with things, whatever that's being asked of us within our charts at any particular given point in time. And that is going to vary from one retrograde season to another. Now, there's one thing that astrology teaches us, and it's the importance of life cycles. And what I love about astrology is that it does not discriminate. No, sirree. No discrimination there. We're all subject to the lessons by the way of the cosmos. As above, so below. Doesn't matter who you are, because there is a time for everything. And a Mercury retrograde season, or any retrograde season for that matter, will ask us to review what's going on, because with every retrograde season, there is a definite theme at play. So when you look at a Mercury retrograde season as a whole, and the gift of Mercury is the ability to put these pieces of the puzzles together so that as it hits the degree that it enters shadow period, 10 degrees Libra in this case, goes to 25 degrees Libra, retrogrades, hits it back. Pay attention to what's going on there. Pay attention to what's going on here. And then as it retraces the steps, these themes get revisited. And then initially, we're not consciously aware of it. But as the season ends, we have a very different perspective and insight from when it first hit that point, when it first entered its season. Now, given that there's time for everything, when Mercury is retrograde, what are the do's and don'ts? First, what should we focus on? Well, for starters, using intuition rather than logic. Getting into the creativity. Paint, pottery, building things, write, playing music, writing music, all those kinds of things. Now, the thing is that I also want to point out too is that it's also that time for mindfulness. With Mercury bringing both pieces of the worlds together, the conscious and unconscious, that's where the true concept of mindfulness comes. And Mercury retrograde is a definite thing to focus on when it comes to that. So we're mindful when we review, we're mindful when we reflect, slowing down, meditating, journaling, great mindfulness tools. And we look at problems or issues from a different perspective with a new understanding. And also it's recommended to be flexible, especially when you're traveling. Dot your I's, cross your T's, double check all those details. Get the vehicle looked after, the tune-up, the look over from the mechanic, just to make sure everything's on the up and up, and you're doing everything that you can within your means to prevent those traveling delays. And also accepting that there may be those frustrations, those delays, and aside from travel, accepting the fact that there's those miscommunications, the misplacement of information, the the typos when you're doing these projects, the problems that arise when you thought you saved your work when you didn't, those kinds of things. it's a great time to reorganize. And it's also a great time to ensure that all your data on your hard drive is backed up, whether it be your computer, your smartphone, tablet, all these things. Ensuring these things are done is a great idea. Now, what's the flip side? What are the things that we should be avoiding? First off, well-known thing is avoid purchasing any electronics. There's tends to be a higher rate of return when you buy that car, when you buy the electronics, any electronic devices like computers, phones, whatever that may be. We tend to avoid that during Mercury retrograde. And one big thing is when it comes to making huge decisions, especially life-changing decisions. Big thing would be buying a house. Not recommended, but we always tend to say with caution, you can't get life getting in the way. If you have to purchase that house during a Mercury retrograde, by all means, it's always recommended to go over the contract with a fine-tooth comb 2-3 times perhaps, and check your P's and Q's, dot your I's, cross your T's. That's one thing that's highly recommended if you happen to buy that house during a Mercury retrograde. At all costs, if you can avoid it, recommended, of course. Another thing too is, launching new things, whether it be business, projects, for those people that are authors, books, especially, these are Mercurial things. Putting on a big, huge event during this time, not recommended as well. It's not a forward motion time. It's a time to slow down. So, all these things when you're, like, for example, holding a big meeting, or you're having a discussion with another individual, and be at that meeting or that discussion, there's a high propensity, for, mutual misunderstandings. And if you think that, you're assuming that there has been an understanding within these meetings, within these discussions, there's a high chance that there wasn't any, that there's, one would have thought that you meant something else. All wasn't as it seemed. And another one, speaking of all that what it seems, is, when you start a new relationship, or you go out on that first date. That's another thing that they said, that's known, that they say is all isn't as it seems. And as Mercury goes direct, then you have a different perspective of the whole thing. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And as always, thank you so much for your comments, likes, subscribes. I do appreciate it all so very much. And I will be back making more videos using real life examples to teach you the language of astrology. And if you haven't already, do visit www.co-creatingtoday, my website, my business. Thank you.